I mean, everybody who's traveling here is on a business trip, right? Super exciting. Yeah. So let's start. You know, when the pandemic started, we had all these doomsday predictions about this is the end of business travel. We had Bill Gates saying 50% of business travel is gone forever, or maybe even more. Well, here we are, 2.5 years later. What do you think, Kerry? Business travel is dead?
Time flies when you're having fun, right? Yeah, I think that was a wrong statement. I think we can all agree with that. The year's not out, but we would definitely surpass 50%. We have to be careful about which country we're talking about. I mean, I have Japan and South Korea within the remit, and of course, they are below 50%, but with the recent news, I would anticipate a very positive trend in the next 3 months. It's very strong GDS growth for certain markets as well in the last few months, which I know you and I have spoken about. Slightly stronger performance on the non-contracted side, on the SME side, but corporate contracted driving back home hard.
Well, first of all, I'm very excited to be on stage in such an exciting conference because corporate travel is always the boring part of the travel industry, and the fact that we actually have a forum in this WiT is actually amazing, so thanks, Yoo-Hoon. And that leads to the answer to your question, which during COVID, everybody was seeing us as almost dead, and I think there was a statement in the press saying that corporate travel will never come back, and obviously we will be replaced by all those online forums and whatever. I mean, look where we are, and it has picked up, and all our data suggests that we are above pre-COVID level, both in terms of transaction value, but transaction now, and the transaction value are actually 20% higher because the average ticket price have gone to the roof for obvious reasons, and we see a lot of demand, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down considering the forward bookings that we are seeing for the end of the year. So this is obviously very exciting, and we are happy to be in that segment of business and making it a bit more dynamic, would I say.
Yeah, and Kerry, to your point, you know, as soon as a country opens up, it seems like it's kind of just waiting, right, for an announcement to say, hey, 11th of October, and I bet people have made their bookings to Japan already, right? Sandeep, the CFO of Sabre, said in your second quarter results, average booking fees are up 11%, and that's down to the business mix, because corporate and international has kind of come up so much. What have you seen since then?
So that's a great comment. Actually, when the markets opened up, leisure travel was obviously the first set of travel that took off. Since then, we've seen a pretty strong recovery on corporate travel, and we've been surveying a lot of agencies across 21 countries. 80% of them are talking about a very strong growth going into the 50-60%. There are 15%, which like Bertrand's FCM, I'm sure, are talking about going well beyond the pre-COVID levels. So that's a pretty positive story because, you know, whether it's airlines or hotels, the corporate travel market is actually the most valuable segment from a revenue perspective. So yeah, I mean, just to put that comment in context.
Yeah, and Johnny, from the US perspective, I think what we saw early on, you know, we've been open in the US for a while now. We saw that SME segment recover pretty quickly. Kerry referred to that as well. What are you seeing now? Is that recovery still kind of underpinned by the SMEs, or are you seeing, you know, managed corporate, the larger corporates traveling?
I think we're definitely seeing the SME space being the most closest to old levels. Large corporate are still in recovery mode, and I would say when you talk to the global corporate travel teams, none of them are talking about being back to 100% of 2019. And you know, the famous comment about corporate travel will come 50% down. I don't think it will go that far down, but when you listen to companies like EY, like McKinsey, Microsoft, they have publicly put sustainability goals out there that talk about reducing carbon emission by anywhere from 25 to 50% by 25. That can only happen by traveling less. There is no magic bullet. So if you think about the sustainability impact, we're probably going to have a short-term peak, and then we will see a long-term impact of sustainability. Hopefully, we will find ways of traveling more with less impact, but that's really the industry challenge we have to deal with.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of a downer, right? Because here we are talking about recovery, revenge travel, and as the business travel industry, we really want people to travel. The challenge, to your point, is how do you travel and at the same time be sustainable? And that's a hard problem to solve. But Cindy?
If I may just add on a small part to Johnny's comments, I do appreciate that the way travel is going to come out of from a corporate travel perspective is going to change. But what we're also seeing, a large number of companies, including Sabre, we work from anywhere now. So the mix of travel, while you may have a lot of internal meetings, so a lot of internal people who are living and working in different places will travel for the purposes of getting back to work, right? I mean, so that mix of travel is going to change in corporate.
Yeah,
right.
and we have a whole new category in corporate travel being the digital nomad travel, where, in the old world we had 1 to 30 days being corporate travel, a year or more would be expatting, and now we have this new in between. We don't have programs to manage it, we don't have deals to kind of support them, and they will be a new fast-growing segment that might recover some of the loss in the traditional corporate segment.
I'm sure, Carrie, digital nomads are on your mind.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't quite hear everything you were saying, but I think the extended stay, so less frequency, but they're going to be with us longer. So I'm sure we're going to have some interesting conversations with customers on that.
Have you started those conversations? Have customers been coming to you and saying, look, let's talk about our
no direct conversations yet, but we're probably going through our real first RFP period, let's be honest, in 2 years. Yeah. So it'll be really interesting to see what some of the conversations are coming through. But I can tell you one thing, we don't have so much of the Sunday night problem anymore. So I think for the last 10 years in the industry, if you're a corporate hotel, you're wondering about how to fill your Sunday night. But that brings us to the trend, of mixing the business trip with leisure, which we're probably seeing on the back of the revenge travel and desire to sort of, see family in the same destination, catch up with friends, or do something in the destination and give back to the destination as well. So there's a lot of that going on in that leisure space as well.
Let's talk about that. That kind of brings up some of these trends in consumer behavior that we are seeing. Leisure being one of them. Digital nomads being another. Bertrand, are you seeing in your data anywhere that there is that blended travel kind of taking a larger share? Are you seeing maybe trip lengths extend longer than pre-pandemic?
Yeah, so it's changing already, though. And that's what we see post-COVID, is that what was true 3 months ago is already changing a bit. But the first trip, so out of this country in particular, the average length of trip is usually 3 days for a corporate traveler. And right after COVID, it was extended to 14 days, which suggested that a lot of people use their business trip to do a bit of VFR, seeing the family that they hadn't seen for a long time, or even just enjoying being away and enjoying the fact that they were, getting out of the Singapore bubble for a while. Now it's kind of coming back to shorter trips. We see that for sure. The point around meeting and events is huge. That's a huge demand right now. And, the development from some of those startups and all that is interesting in that respect, because how do we find spaces for people to meet in small meetings? So those big conferences are obviously existing right now, and we understand that there is a bit of a catch-up to make it happen, because it didn't for 2 years. But the small ones seem to be the thing that are going to be happening more and more in the coming years, because people are just spread around and still need to meet as a team, and work together on some projects or things like that.
But I think that's also addressing the other trend, which is sort of the working from home revelation, right?
The distributed
So I know that we've
workforce.
really focused on what we call worksipality, which is really finding different spaces and changing them for different purposes, getting revenue into areas. We talked about that earlier in the lobby, but creating lively spaces that can be sold for people who are wanting to work from hotels. And that's not just in the bedrooms, but just any space that we can think of. So it's an active strategy and something we started before COVID, but it's accelerated.
Right. Actually, to that point, I'm going to go back to what you said about the trips sort of going back from the longer lens to the shorter lens. You know, it's very expensive to travel right now, right? Airfares are through the roof. Hotel rates, ADRs are super high. When I think about sort of some of the challenges, you know, is cost of travel, are budgets going to sort of be a dampener on this enthusiasm that we have right now? Do you think corporates are going to, you know, crack down, so to speak?
It will depend. I would not say, so first of all, price has never been such of a low priority for corporates. You know, when 3 years ago, everybody was shouting when they were seeing a $50 difference with a website. Now they are happy when they get a seat, which is a very interesting situation. But the priorities are more shifted into what can we do now to work on our program to make it more adapted post-COVID world. And the dimensions around sustainability and all of that become more and more prominent. And sustainability can include a lot of things. So I agree with Johnny that maybe some corporates are going to start thinking, let's travel less. But I think most of them are more thinking, let's travel more intelligently, which is a very different way of looking at it. Yeah. Meaningful trip and defining what it means having a meaningful trip. It's about, yes, purpose, absolutely, right? Giving visibility to CO2 emission, and then it's questions, you know, even if you pay more for a direct trip, if you avoid like 3 stops and going around the planet, maybe it's a better thing as a company. So all of those questions are starting to be asked very strongly from corporate customers. So I'm not saying that price is not going to become again a priority. I'm saying it's not right now because I guess the travel budget have not been used for the past years or so, and I think there is a bit of a catch-up on that, but it's interesting to see kind of the shift of priorities, though.
So maybe ask us again after the RFP season.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
And in the US, we're already hearing from large companies like Google that they are reducing number of trips because of the cost of travel. So it is having an impact in how much they will let people go on these kind of shorter term trips.
You know, it always strikes me as funny because, you know, I've worked in corporate travel, and there is a big gap between sometimes what corporates say is policy, but then when it comes down to actual implementation, yeah, right, it just doesn't happen. People want to travel, and they do travel, and they kind of find ways to travel. Right.
I think there's a return on travel investment, which is really important. So corporate policies are evolving to look at a return on that investment of travel. And I think that's something that really support TMCs in the way that the corporates start looking at travel.
To that point, do you think that it's easily measurable? You know, because again, ROI on a business trip, it's not a new idea, but it's been very, very hard to kind of get to a point where you can say, you know, this is it, like this trip was really worth it, versus another one that was,
you know,
that was
Charuta,
not.
if we are very honest, when COVID started, people went online very easily. And a lot of companies could continue using the sales pipeline that they've built, you know, before. And it was easy because the connections were made, people could interact online because they met before. I think it's much more complicated after 2 years when the pipeline has dried up, you have not been present in the market any longer, nobody has seen you, your brand is getting less exposure. I mean, depending on what sector you're in, but clearly meeting face-to-face make business happen. So we, you know, obviously as a TMC, we believe that we encourage companies to invest for their future, not to have a cost which is unbearable for the company to deal with, you know. And that's a much greater purpose, I would say. And, you know, I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
Completely agree. And you're talking about the customers, but it's also the internal onboarding of keeping your culture alive in a business and spending time with your teams wherever they are in the world, and the amount of transition of people coming in and out of organizations over the last 2.5 years. I mean, I know it's a struggle for us just to keep up and to keep the knowledge and make people feel like they belong, which is something that people want when they join organizations.
Yeah, and Sandeep, you have a team that is spread out across many different countries. I know you've been traveling quite a bit.
Absolutely.
You moved here recently.
And there's a great value in meeting a customer face to face. That's very important. I think from a TMC perspective, there are a couple of other areas that I'd like to just quickly touch upon, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
There are 2 or 3 things that I hear a lot from travel management companies. One is talent and people, right? I mean, getting people on board. So I think one of the trends that we are seeing when we have these conversations with TMCs is around automation and driving, a process improvement so that they don't have to hire as many people. The second thing that we are seeing, which is around safety and security, which is a whole evolution right now post-COVID around how do corporate travel programs evolve to include that in the program in a lot more meaningful way. And the third thing that we are hearing a lot from TMCs and particularly the mid-sized agencies is the whole revenue stream, because now the revenues got very fragmented. Airlines have gone through a very tough time. And hospitality and a whole bunch of other revenue streams have now become really, really important in that corporate travel space. So what I'm seeing in those conversations with the TMCs is that there's a very, very different dynamic post-pandemic in the way that the TMCs are organizing themselves.
Johnny, you agree?
Definitely, and I think coming out of COVID, the suppliers have realized that this is kind of their window of opportunity for modernizing business models as well. And we're seeing it kind of in our environment. We have created a new open platform designed to connect with suppliers any way they want. We already have a few suppliers that are offering deals that are no longer, searchable by Google or Expedia or whatever, because these deals are sitting in a new digital framework that cannot be kind of exposed to others. So we will start seeing a new kind of pricing environment that might motivate corporate travelers to travel more because they get a different price point than the public market will be seeing.
Yeah. Talking about that, it always, when you talk about an open platform, I hate to say the word NDC, right?
Sure. So
I know.
I love it.
I think Timothy made that comment earlier. Is it still NDC or is it ODC, maybe old, instead of new? But when we talk about open platforms like this, that has an impact, on Sabre. Especially, we heard recently that Qantas is kind of now levying surcharges. If you go other than their direct sort of connect. What do you think of that, Sandeep? That has an impact on you.
So I think, and I'd like Bertrand's view also on that, because I think NDC as a program is important for airlines because they want to get into better retailing, and the best way of managing NDC is through a shopping experience, which any GDS would provide, right? In the case of Qantas specifically, I want to call out that if you do want to avoid the surcharge, you can still do the transaction through a GDS, but make sure that you're signed up on the Qantas platform. But more importantly, I think as corporate travel evolves, NDC actually hasn't really become very important to corporate travel at this stage, because the way the corporate travel programs for airlines work, that platform is far more powerful than the NDC platform. NDC is far more, at this stage, more oriented towards the leisure sides of the business.
Oh, this is very true. I can't agree more.
Yeah.
I think airlines, first of all, and I think it was said before, NDC is not really a standard. And the problem that each airline has built his own flow with his own type of API and trying to achieve sometimes very different things, which is kind of confusing for us as a distributor. But that being said, I think the progress is happening, and there is some interesting things in NDC in terms of personalization. And that's a big thing that corporate travelers tell us. It's like, we work with a TMC, but we want the TMC and the provider to know who we are, so that when we check in a hotel, we go to on any flight, I'm recognized I'm Mr. X, which is very difficult to achieve with such a fragmented industry that we have right now. So we believe that NDC can bring a lot of that, so that's why we invested actually millions which I'm not going to disclose, in a aggregator, which is a TP Connect, which is exactly doing this, because it's about aggregating GDS and non-GDS content and making it available to our customer base. And that's just for that, because we believe in it, we believe it's going to happen, but yes, it's very slow. And I think we still need to work with airlines to figure out what exactly we want to achieve with it.
Yeah. So I just have to say that, we have a very opposite view. We believe NDC is going to be a major success in corporate travel. We are live with American Airlines. That was announced about a month ago. We're seeing significant uptake already. I'm not allowed to share the percentage. That's Americans' call.
Oh, come on. He won't tell us how many millions. He won't tell us the uptake.
Well, I can say we are definitely in the, in the upper half of the second quarter, right, if you look at where we're sitting. But more importantly, why should airlines standardize on a protocol in a digital competitive market landscape? They should be able to do exactly what they want to promote their product the best way.
Yes.
That's why we are saying, connect to us, give us anything you can. We will build new capabilities that fit into the corporate program, and we no longer have this online-offline world.
I think we are saying the same thing, but differently.
And I think the important thing in all of that is to be able to provide the shopping experience, right? If you have to go to 3 different channels, if you go to the airline channel, to the aggregator channel, and to the GTS for your booking and shopping, it doesn't work. You have to be able to provide it in one shopping experience.
Yeah, of course.
And that is what is most important, right? I mean, that's why it's really important to make sure that that aggregation happens. That's the best thing that actually currently TMCs utilize GDSs for, is the shopping experience.
Yeah, the deeper problem is that NDC was never designed to go into a PNR. Right? The moment you put it in a PNR, you lose all the digital innovation, because you're stuck in an edifact world with unstructured data lines. So you need to modernize the backend.
I don't think this is something that we're going
go
to
round
agree
in
on
circles
for a
on.
long
Go
time.
round in
Yes.
circles on.
Yes.
Let me break it, because there's obviously a couple of different opinions. But I mean, certainly from a hotel perspective, our current distribution platform, our current CRS wouldn't be able to do that. But it's certainly the next, the project that's currently underway that we're working through, it's typically the type of platform that we would be able to connect with. So clearly for us, we'll be watching the space very carefully and making sure that we share in the success of all platforms.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
Right. I'm a little bit conscious of time, but let's kind of talk about payments, because that's also something that's been brought up, in several different sessions. So, Sabre, you bought Confirma Pay, right? We're all kind of like, well, what happens? There's what are the TMCs going to do? What are the hospitality groups going to do? So very quickly, Kerry, I'll start with you.
Yeah,
what do you think?
We have an ongoing project at the moment to, I guess, really make ACL the merchant of record, so that we can really quickly integrate lots of different payments, because I would say that we're quite behind in that space at the moment when we compare ourselves to some of our partners. So huge focus for us over the next 12 months. We've got a pilot here in Asia in the last quarter of the year.
Massive issue, not an easy answer in the corporate world. More than half of our customers are still on credit terms and are hesitating to use cards in 2022, believe it or not. But they use that as a basically negotiation point. So there's a moment, But for us, now with the cost of capital and the industry taking off, it obviously consumes a lot of our capital, which we cannot continue to do in a sustainable way. So we need to find solutions, but we need to also think the complexity of the flow of corporate travelers, with some not having cash, not having credit card, but still we need to pay on behalf of the traveler and then get the money back. And then if you include expense into the mix, it's actually a massive area which we are working on very actively, working with fintech and all that. But
is it a market-by-market solution? Because that was also, one
that's
of the
another
things
problem.
that came up. Yeah.
Like we were talking about airline and regulation. UATP was an amazing solution for airline payment, and then the Chinese airlines last year decided to pull that off the market. So here we are again trying to find solutions for problems that we didn't have, and that's kind of the issues in this kind of environment.
If I may just have a couple of words about virtual payments, I think it's really valuable for hospitality industry. It's in the previous discussions that we were having, It's a great new revenue stream for TMCs using virtual payments. And the third thing is it actually reduces your whole risk while improving your process because of auto-reconciliations. So I certainly believe, I've worked both in the payments industry and the travel industry, I certainly believe that virtual payments is going to really transform the way TMCs operate.
So if I'm a supplier and I hear that virtual payment is a new revenue stream for TMCs, then I get concerned because suppliers are paying the cost of that payment, right? So I think we're going to see alternative payments move into corporate travel. We're already talking to a few corporate buyers who want to pay with stablecoins, which means it's digital asset technology with no risk of currency speculation.
What kind of timeline are we talking about there? Because I feel like, you know, we can barely get through kind of the basic
Q4.
problems. We were talking about faxes not so long ago for virtual
Q4
payments.
this year, right? Remember, this industry has not exactly been a front runner in new payment technology. Outside travel, there's a lot of companies that already work with new payment technology.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you on that in Q4, okay, or maybe Q1. All right, we're out of time, but I'm going to end this on a, you know, the way Suhoon does, word association. So I'm going to ask you, Carrie, just what you think. Greenwashing.
We shouldn't do it.
Yes, we shouldn't. Personalization.
The future.
2030, maybe?
No, 2023.
2023, okay. Sandeep, end-to-end travel, connecting.
I think that's going to be really important, you know, because customers are looking for personalization. End-to-end is going to be really, really important.
The future,
Yeah.
okay. Johnny, blockchain.
Will manage contract for negotiated deals in the future.
All right, thank you very much. Carrie, Bertrand, Sandeep, Johnny.
Thank you.
Thank you.